Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports Georgia Bulldogs. Got a lot to go over today. Got a spring game coming up in about 2 months, but we want to dive into it a little bit. Some coaching changes, wide receiver room, running back room. We've been having a few coaches changes for the last few weeks. We've been discussing it. To talk more about all this, we're going to bring in our Georgia Bulldog insider, Mr. Bryce Mandala. Bryce, how you doing, big man?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Happy to see you here. We had our last video. A lot of people seem to have enjoyed it outside of you calling, James Jared. I think we did pretty well breaking down the running back
Yeah.
room. But look, I think Georgia fans are pretty excited for the most part for this running back room and what it's going to look like for this next season. And look, I think we should definitely talk about other rooms, but that was people seem to enjoy it a lot though.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing about it, I know we were getting some comments how I didn't bring up a couple guys. If I wanted to go through the whole, 10 man running back roster, the video would have been like 40 minutes. So, guys like Dwight Phillips who are also, coming in with Nate Frazier and then Andrew Paul. Sorry I didn't bring those names up. Just it would have made for a little too long of a video. I was kind of primarily focused on just talking about the four main ball carriers for the 2024 season.
Next video. Hey, if they're in the spring game, if AP
Yeah,
starts looking like AP, maybe we'll talk about him.
exactly.
He'll earn his
And
reps.
it's the spring game, so there are going to be some guys that aren't going to get very many touches during the regular season that could show out in the spring game. So that'll be something obviously 2 months away, but to check out for that.
For sure. And we'll get into spring game, but let's talk about wide receiver coach. You guys bring back an oldie with this one, and James Coley. You've obviously had some changes in other areas of the room, which we're going to get into running back. But let's talk about Coley and what he brings to the table for you guys.
Yeah, so James Coley, he was part of Kirby Smart's first staff in 2016. And just doing a little bit of research, on this guy for this video, he has been everywhere. He's been with the Miami Dolphins as a defensive assistant, Texas A&M as a tight ends coach and co-offensive coordinator. He's been with Florida State, University of Miami, South Carolina. I mean, this guy has just been everywhere. One of those guys that gets caught up in the coaching carousel. Job opens, kind of it's a domino effect in Division I football how that happens. So James Coley is back on the Georgia staff after losing Brian McClendon to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was our former wide receivers coach, but obviously it's a good hire because he was a part of Kirby Smart's first staff in 2016. So nothing much more to say than that.
Yeah, it's good adding a guy like this with a ton of experience to the wide receiver room. Again, I mean, it's very granular, right? We're getting down to the nitty gritty here, but it's kind of where we're at right now. And we talked last time with the coaches that are going to the NFL or getting promotion job, which your running back coach McGee, who's going to Georgia State, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. A lot of good things are happening on the staff for Georgia, which kind of leaves you in this boat of trying to fill the place. Look, I think in someone like Coley, obviously with a big carousel and a long resume of coaching jobs, seems to have found his home. He probably won't, he's not a guy that's going to continue to climb, and it just doesn't have him in him. Florida has Billy Gonzalez. He's been a wide receiver coach since 1945. That's just what the guy does. And it's a good thing because you don't have to worry about losing him to a head coaching job at Georgia State in a year and a half. You just lock it in. Let's ride this thing out. Let's keep moving. But Georgia State, McGee is going to take the head coaching job, which is awesome for him. But now we just got done talking about this great running back room. Who takes over this running back room now?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, I guess, with Brian McClendon, of what we lost in the wide receiver room, Brian McClendon had only been the wide receivers coach since 2022. I mean, after that first national championship. Whereas Del McGee, he's been the running back coach at UGA for the past 8 seasons.
Wow.
First staff along with James Coley in 2016 with Kirby Smart. And he has been here for everything. The 7-5 season in 2016, the 2 national championships. I mean, he's been here for it all. So this is definitely a little bit of a different loss for the Georgia Bulldogs, and just kind of the positional coaching. So this is a guy who he's produced, Nick Chubb. He's produced Zamir White, James Cook, not Jared Cook, Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, Dejan Edwards. Like he's been through it with all of those guys. So this is a bit of a different scenario. But like I said in a previous video, Georgia, the one downside to this program is our positional coaches, they're going to get opportunities to, you know, have head coaching jobs. We lost our DBs coach a few months ago, Fran Brown. He's the head coach at Syracuse now. Last year, Todd Monken obviously took a offensive coordinator job at, with the Baltimore Ravens. And you see it again. Like, there's just going to be opportunities with, being a positional coach at the University of Georgia that looks very good on a resume. And, it's going to open up doors to be a head coach. So I guess that's kind of the only downside to our program is there's so many revolving doors with our coaching staff.
And look, I think a move like this doesn't affect on-field production this year as much, but it's going to impact recruiting, I would imagine. And again, Georgia has no issues recruiting, but it's someone who's been there for 8 years. He's probably, Kirby's gotten to the point where he trusts him to run that, no problemo. So having somebody come in again, Fran Brown, you've got two coaches that probably had a heavy hand in a lot of the decision making of their position groups, because they go from where they are to be head coaches at Georgia State isn't as big as Syracuse, and Syracuse isn't massive, but Syracuse is definitely a respectable school on the up and up. They're going all in. I think making the move on Fran Brown, they have seemed to turn over a new leaf of Syracuse football, though we have not seen in a very long time. And Fran Brown's not going there to fold. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be able.
They got Kyle McCord too. So
yeah,
Ohio State's quarterback.
They're doing really well. They've recruited well. They made a strong push there. He's already got a few guys for 2025. I know they did pretty well in the transfer portal again with the Kyle McCord. So in Syracuse standards, I mean, he's crushing it in a very short period of time. Again, coming from that Kirby tree, it's going to be exciting to see what he's able to do there. Kirby's creating his own tree that Saban has sprouted, similar to what Saban sprouted over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, and that's I wouldn't say it's quite to that magnitude.
No,
I mean, Kirby Smart was under Nick Saban, and same thing with Lane Kiffin. So I would, it's shaping up to be that way in about 10 years, I'd say.
Sure,
like,
these are
you might see, you could possibly, Del McGee, he could be Georgia Tech's next head, or probably not, but because they're on the up. But like, Georgia State is actually not a bad program. I mean, you remember. In 2019, they beat Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. So a lot of people forget that. So they went 7-6 last year. They open up the season in Atlanta against Georgia Tech. So, they could be a program, and a mid-major program that could also be, on the come up as well.
Yeah, something to watch out for sure. So look, I'm not saying he's Saban, but he's definitely starting to drop his acorns and get into that world of growing that coaching tree that obviously we Saban is so famous for. But look, let's get into it too. I mean, the next thing, and we're trying to force this along. We've said it multiple times. We are in the dead of winter here when it comes to college football in a sense. And mid-March we get to practice. I keep saying March 1st. I keep hoping that maybe we get it sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's like March 10th, 11th, I think is when it actually starts. And then before you know it, it's spring football, which is happening April 13th. Same day as the Florida Gators, which why that plays a factor, in my opinion, is Florida for the last 2 years has had their spring game on Thursday. Billy, I believe, did that on a Thursday night to avoid competition with the likes of Georgia and other schools of hosting big-time recruits. Now his third year in, he's like, look, I think they noticed the lack of output that it was putting in. Fans coming on a Thursday night, it's kind of tough. Although it was still a great time, it was under the lights, but nobody wants to go and hang out and party on a Thursday. So Saturday, bringing it back to the roots. It's going to be interesting to see what big time recruits that both teams are pulling for to see where they go come April 13th.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too. I remember last year's G-Day, the field at Sanford Stadium, like just the overall quality of the grass was terrible. So I'm curious to see like how it's a very niche thing for me to point out, but that's just the one big thing that I remember from last year's G-Day was the grass looked like trash. And obviously I don't expect it to be in, middle of September quality grass, but I would have liked to see a little bit nicer groundskeeping at Sanford Stadium. But it'll be interesting this year's G-Day because we finally get to see our loaded 2024 class. Guys like Ellis Robinson, Ryan Puglisi, those guys finally hit the field in a competitive manner, and they kind of set it up to where it's red versus black, and they make it as even and as competitive as possible. So we're going to be seeing some insane matchups on both ends of, or both sides of the field, I should say. It's not going to be our starters versus our second stringers, but this is what Carson, like, I feel like solidified almost Carson Beck as the starter. Carson Beck last year in our G Day game, I don't know, I should have pulled up his, exact stats, but all I know, it was like 15 for 17, like crazy stat line. And it kind of put Brock Vandegrift in the shadows a little bit. A lot of people say that, it wasn't until the 2 weeks before leading up to the first game that the quarterback position was decided. But when I saw that spring game and Carson Beck perform last year, I knew that he was going to be our starter moving forward. So it's a huge opportunity for not only fans, but kind of the coaches be able to see, like, if guys can play.
Yeah, it'll definitely determine a few position groups that are kind of up for grabs. And last year, the quarterback, I think we all felt it was going to be Carson Beck. There was a lot of murmurs, but that quarterback room was thick with Brock and who's the not Ryan, but the other guy, your third string now,
Gunnar Stockton.
So it's gonna be cool to see him now, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's like our third string guy.
And so I would imagine he's your second string now. So we'll see what he's able to do going up against Carson Beck, another year under his belt as well. So it will be interesting to see again how it all plays out and what recruits are there. I know also too, we talked about they ripped up the shrubs, so it'll be interesting to see if those are their hedges. I mean,
yeah, that's true. The hedges, the first time in 30 years that they've been taken out, and they definitively said that they're going to be back for the fall, but I'm not sure if they're going to be back for G Day, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, I've never seen it without the hedges, and I imagine you neither.
Yeah, nobody ever has.
So that will be kind of interesting to see. I also know. I mean, again, I've got a couple of Georgia friends. They usually put on a big show. Someone comes out and rocks out for spring day, some kind of concert. Is that? Have you heard what it could be, or is that planning to be the case?
No, so it's not. I know exactly what you're talking about. Ludacris in like 2015. I wasn't even watching Georgia football at this time, but like Ludacris, he's from Georgia and everything. Ludacris came out and performed like a halftime show with the 2015 G Day. So I don't recall anything happening last year, but what I will say is they do have a alumni flag football game. It's not, and I know this too because I was working last year the access verification for the flag football game. So I was like basically registering the guys into the game, and it was pretty cool to see a ton of Georgia football alumni. Not like the big dogs aren't really playing in it. Like it's a lot of guys that I had never even recognized, but yeah, they do have an alumni flag football game.
Is that during G Day or before or after?
It's I believe it was after, actually. I believe it was after because I don't think they would have. Yeah, it had to have been because there's no way they'd play the game and then like kind of have the grass like messed up like that. It was definitely after.
Sure. That's pretty cool. That is cool. So, okay, so the concert thing, the way my buddy makes it seem like they have one every single year. So that was the one-time thing. Luda came out and spit some bars.
I don't believe they do. Now, look, I could get flamed in the comments for not knowing this. But another thing too, yeah, I might get cooked. Georgia might do that every
James cooked or Jared cooked?
But like that. Jared
cooked on this one.
But
okay.
in the time that I have been here, no, there hasn't been like a performance. But I know Ludacris did in 2015.
Okay. And do you know if it's going to be daytime or nighttime, or they announced that yet?
It's during the day. It's like a noon game.
Okay. Yeah. So that's right.
I don't think they've announced that yet, but it's been just right in the middle of the day.
All right, look, and I think it's going to be interesting. We had Florida last year. We had a big commit, Xavier Filsme, who ended up flipping anyways. But usually a spring game is a big time for a lot of recruits to come. Usually a big one will commit to help influence any other ones that are there. So that will be something that we'll definitely keep an eye on. Julian Lewis, a quarterback that just was announced today that Georgia seems to be the real legitimate threat to flip him from USC. We talked about him because he's visiting Oregon. We talked about him on our Oregon channel as well. Look, I think if there's USC right now, in my opinion, does not have this strong hold on quarterbacks and recruiting as they once did. Lincoln Riley has seemed to have fallen off, and you've got to like the fact that they lost out on Dylan Raiola, which you and I have just discussed. I don't think it's that big of a loss, but Kirby doesn't like losing, regardless if however you value that loss. And he definitely is probably looking at that one of like that was a tough loss in the status point of view of losing out on a big time quarterback. The fact that he has his eyes on Julian Lewis and is heavily going after him and the noise continues to rise will be interesting to see if Julian is there for that game and if he does make a big splash.
Yeah, he's taken a visit. Believe it was like 3 weeks ago. He went to a basketball game and he posted on Twitter like, the typical thank you Kirby Smart for having me, stuff like that. And he's a Georgia guy and he's been committed to USC for the past it's been like 2 years since 8th grade. And I think you said it when we talked about him like 4 episodes ago that at that point, you're committing to a program, or what do you say? I think you're like committing to a coach, not a program, or like something along the lines of that. Whereas like if you're committing that far out, it's almost like there's a high likelihood that you're gonna flip.
Sure, he committed to the program, not the coach, is what you're saying. He committed.
Yeah,
because he committed so far back. Yeah. That he was committing more to just being a Trojan.
Yeah, and it's I don't believe in the near future, the next 2 seasons, that USC is gonna be a legitimate contender in the college football playoff. I mean, they had a pretty good run in the 2022 season when they, what was it? They lost to Oregon in the
the
Pac-12
Utah.
Utah. But yeah, I don't really foresee
Tulane
them
in the bowl
having
game.
a crazy run. Yeah, and then Tulane in the bowl game. But I feel like if it's not Georgia, I don't think it's USC either.
Yeah, I think USC is out of it. Genuinely, I think Oregon's going to play a big factor. Dan Laney's done a good job. And look, I think 2 years ago, when he's probably visiting USC, it probably was a school, a dream of his to play there. You get older, you get a little bit wiser, you start getting treated differently when you go to these schools. Becomes a business because your whole mindset changes completely. I've got a little brother. He's 2026 quarterback. He's played at IMG. Obviously, my family, my pops and I, big time Gators. He's not bought in on the Gators. He wants to go best suited for him. When I ask him, I ask him all the time, where you going, man? Where are you going to pick? He loved Alabama at one point because of Nick Saban. Right now, he loves UCF. He's been there a lot. They treat him very well. They text him. They follow up with him. Like, it's crazy to think, like, again, how much passion we put into being fans to these schools that when these kids go and they play, like, he's watched it, he's been part of it, but it's like it changes when it becomes relationship based. It overshadows the love for a school for some kids, not everybody, but I definitely think it plays a factor. And then obviously NIL is another one, but it will be. Look, I think Kirby usually gets what he wants, and if he wants Julian Lewis, I think he's gonna do everything he can to get him. And we also talked too last time. There isn't many top 10 quarterbacks that are left. Julian Lewis is one of them, but I believe 9 out of 10 are committed currently. That doesn't mean you can't flip one of them, but it's not like you've got a full just litter of to go choose from. I mean, you're stealing from somebody's home. Just depends on who do you want to steal from.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Well, boys and girls, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe on the way to 300 subs. Mean a lot if you could help us get there. Great show as always. Let us know down in the comment section your thoughts, some things you would like to hear us discuss. Until next time, I'm Shelton. That's Bryce. See you guys. Peace.